and viewers for this morning on GMT. I'm going to be joined for the entire morning by the Secretary of Settlements, Public Utilities and Rural Development, Mr. Ian Pollard. So a special good morning and welcome to you, Mr. Pollard. How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine, Kandace, and good morning. Good morning to your viewing public. Good morning to the constituents of Mason, Mariah, and the on the World Wide Web.
All right, great to have you this morning. So I'm going to get into, first of all, just dealing with the utilities part, because of course, public utilities is under your portfolio, even though a lot of it is controlled by the central government. I want to get from you, what's been the relationship like, especially with the line minister, Minister Marvin Gonzalez, in terms of, working together to address utilities issues that are within the island?
There are no relationship between Mr. Gonzalez and I. We have never meted out to each other. I mean, I only got the first invitation when they were doing the pipeline. And then they said they sent me a second email, which I didn't receive, about the change of date. And then when his recent visit to open the booster station in my constituency, there were no invitations, so there's no communication. I usually communicate with Mr. Brian Williams and the technical staff in Tobago. We usually have meetings, but there's no communication between Mr. Gonzalez and I. I must say that the attitude and behavior of Mr. Gonzalez is very disrespectful to the Tobago House of Assembly, from the Chief Secretary come down to all the secretaries and Assistant Secretary, because Secretary George is the person overseeing public utilities from the division standpoint, but he didn't even receive an invitation also. So it is gross disrespect. But that is nothing new from the PNM.
And just in general, do you have any communication even with the ministry in terms of whatever is happening under the scope of public utilities?
No, because to me, some persons in Trinidad are not aware that this is a line item under the 5th schedule, public utilities in Tobago, and they must have collaboration. But he said that he's going to have better collaboration going forward. That's the first meeting we had with the Chief Secretary, but we have seen that he has fallen back on his word. So we're hoping that we're going to get, that's going to improve. But Kandace, the most important thing to me is that once people of Tobago receive the service, because I remember when the PP government was in office, there was a hue and cry for ministers to come to Tobago to open anything in Tobago. You couldn't come and do it. There was this barrage, these people expressing themselves that you're not supposed to come and do it, and now they are coming and do it. But once it is to benefit Tobago, because we are 200 years behind Trinidad. From 1962 to now, since we gained our independence, we are almost 200 years behind Tobago, Trinidad in development. So once it's going to improve the lives of Tobagonians, I'm all for it.
Great. So how does this lack of a relationship affect your ability to execute your duties where public utilities are concerned?
Well, like I said, I have a very good relationship with Mr. Brian Williams, who is the manager of Tobago Affairs.
For WASA
and his technical team. I have a better relationship with TNTech, because we always have meeting with Mr. Giles, Mr. McCarty. And so we on the upper level team of the TNTech, but we usually have meeting with them on a regular basis. So there's a better relationship with the personnel at TNTech.
Now, in this dry season, are you monitoring what's been going on with the water supply?
Yes, and it's always a problem, and I'm wondering why, because I've always had conversation with Brian that we need to start to desilt some of the rivers. The rivers they need desilting at this point in time, and we have to, the measures that they're putting, that you can't use a garden hose because we have the water levels dropping every dry season. Because I'm the one getting all the complaints, because as soon as the constituents are out of water, they call, I haven't got received water for a week, you haven't done this. So we really have to do something after 62 years of being independent. We have to do something where the water situation is concerned in Tobago, or in Trinidad and Tobago.
And are you also monitoring, what's been happening with the electricity and the data connectivity? What from your perspective, how are we in terms of those utilities?
Well, like I said, Secretary George is in charge of the public utility sector. But in my early meetings with who was the general manager, I can't remember, Mr. Ramsuk, I know in a meeting we had discussed that Tobago, we are overproducing electricity. So there were talks of even shipping it out to Trinidad or other Caribbean islands. So we shouldn't have any problem where electricity supply is concerned. But it's just that sometime of implementing the works, because we have paid for electrification of some places in Tobago, replacing of streetlights. And the sad part of it, Kandace and Tobago, is that these works are scheduled given the go-ahead from Trinidad. So we have paid those money before the end of the financial year last year. And some of these places have not received the electrification or change of streetlights. So we are asking Tobagonians to bear patience with us. It's not that we are not doing our part of it, but it's just the system that we operate under.
Tell me about those areas that you have been trying to get lit in Tobago.
Well, I've just had a meeting with Mr. Giles and his team about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's like, we wanted on the Lecato Road, Annesville Road, there's the former regime, they put down solar lights. But I'm going to say it here public now. From the Wassa pump station to where my family owns property in Annesville, I paid $120,000 to put electricity on the roadway. And then they came after and put solar lights 5 feet away from an electric pole. That's a waste of resources because eventually these roads would have to be lit. So we're hoping that sometime that this year we could take up all these 22 solar light poles and put them in places that are really needed and have that whole place electrificated. And they're like on the Castara Road from Mount Dillon Hill, right into Castara. I mean, it would be a travesty if someone gets into some accident there in the nighttime. There are other places in the rural areas, like in Craig Hall number 1 in my constituency, as you go up Big River Hill to the back behind it, there are a number of houses constructed behind there now, no electricity. Persons are still using generators, so we're hoping that we could get those places. And there are even places in the southwestern end, around Scarborough. We just did Old Fort. That costed us probably around $300,000. So there are places, but rest assured that we're going to get it done little by little and make sure that no one is in short supply where electricity is concerned.
Okay. And how much has the division paid out to TNTech to have all these places lit?
I would say probably over $2 million so far because, we are heavily underfunded, but we try our best. The coordinator of the division of that unit, she is always in contact and we always try to get the job done. As people send in requests, we send them, but it's when like the next shipment, when I spoke to Mr. Giles, the next shipment of poles and things coming to Tobago will be in April. So we just have to wait until that time. But money has been expended already to cover all these costs.
And I also want to talk a little bit about data in Tobago because, of course, that remains a challenge. And we're in an age where we are very much dependent on data connectivity in the same way that we are dependent on electricity. What's been happening with that concern? What insights can you tell us about making sure that some of the areas that are a little bit harder to reach can get connected?
Well, I know I had discussion with TSTT and Digicel probably in 2022. And we're talking about Y-zone areas in various communities that you have Y-zone areas, you have free Wi-Fi. But it's appalling that even when you're driving on the highway, when you reach Light and Life, it's a dead zone. When you're on the Lambo or the Milford Road, that's a dead zone as you're going on there. So I think Digicel just we gave them permission to bring on some cable at Petitchou, which will improve the service. So we're hoping that at least they could improve and provide the necessary services that are required. Even like there's a place in back of Mongrace there, Google Patch. I had, when I was the representative when I campaigned in 2021, they had persons up there doing CXC exam, but there was no Wi-Fi connectivity. And we know we were coming out of COVID. And it was really stressful for those persons. So we're hoping that they could carry the service in there because in those days, I wrote to them asking them if they could provide the services, but there was no poles, so we made sure that the electricity pole went in so that they could use the poles now to take the electricity into Google Patch and these places because they had one young man up there with about 7 or 9 subjects and he's going on to A levels and he wanted to get access, internet access. So we're hoping that they could improve the services and even in the rural areas, palliative care, Lansom, in these places, that services could really meet them. But if we are getting problems right here in Scarborough, Kandace, but we're hoping that could really, really improve.
All right. Well, I just want to get into settlements a little bit and housing because, that is a major challenge for us here in Tobago. And, some years ago it was said that the list for housing is about 7,500 people on the list. I don't know what's happening with that list. Has that gone up? What's the situation like?
It has gone up considerably because we have about 8,000 persons on our database, and I know they're going to increase. But we are trying our best to provide for Tobagonians, and we want to work on delivering some of these housing developments as quickly as possible. I know we have carded Chauvin. Before I get to explain about these developments, I would like first to say that Just on Monday, the newest special purpose company on the island is the Tobago Urban and Rural Housing Corporation.
Yes.
So they are in charge of doing all housing developments on the island. So they will undertake where we are at the division, because we are in the negotiation stage now with the contractor that was selected for Chauvin, that is supposed to yield 447 units. But I want to remind Tobagonians that we do not have enough land space to suffice everyone, because Tobagonians, we love our own little private space. So we are doing something new from the trip that the team and I made to Jamaica along with the chief secretary, where we saw that, it's high time we started to do like other countries. We have to start to use airspace because we don't have enough land. So the development is supposed to yield 447 units. I think it's going to be 70 single units. They're going to have some duplexes and 8 high-rise buildings, 6-story, yielding 192 units. In Adventure, we're looking to put in 140 units in Adventure. In Masonol, in Adelphi, behind the works office where the basketball court is, we are supposed to yield about 36 to 37 parcels of lands. And Bacalet, that was purchased for the Scarborough Secondary School, which is now handed over to the Division of Settlements, because they took the piece of land that we had behind the health center. We are hoping to have that put in infrastructure and have those given out between this year and next year. So we're not going to be like the last regime where we're going to hold lands back and stuff. We're going to just, as soon as they're ready, we're going to just give them money. There will be no political gimmickry under this dispensation, because Tobagonians have been crying for too long.
Yes. And
just yesterday, I was saying in media, Executive Council media briefing, 2 developments in Tobago that are 50 years old, Milford Court and Buku. And yet today, I could still find vacant lands in there that I have to give out to Tobagonians on Friday. And Tobagonians have been clamoring for lands, because everybody wants to get out of this rent. People say rent is dead money, they need something of their own, and you know how we build Kandace. We put on 2 rooms, we move in, we put on this, we put on that. And it's high time, because that was the mandate given by our chief secretary and the executive council, that we distribute these lands as they become available, so persons could face a mortgage, because the older you get, the harder it gets to get a mortgage from the bank.
All right, so I want to get a little bit into those individual projects themselves, starting with like the duplexes and so on that you mentioned, and you're hoping to have this completed by the end of next year.
No, well, the contractual period is for 42 months for completion.
Okay.
So we're hoping that we get started this year, because it's going to be on a phase basis. I think the first phase is supposed to yield 70 units, and they move on to a second phase. So we're hoping that they could complete 2 phases before the next election. Okay. So that at least persons, we encourage persons to now to go and get pre-qualified. I think the chief secretary and the executive council, we have to discuss that persons could start making contributions as early as possible. So when it's time for them to move in, they almost have paid off whatever the cost of the units.
So how much would the units themselves cost?
If I could remember, I think the 2 bedrooms are costing like about 600 or 650,000. The 3 bedrooms are costing about between 795 and 850, and the high rise at 995. When we did the calculation, the person who's the contractor, to recover his money, because the contract cost is $462.5 million. So in order for him to recover the finances, he will have the opportunity to sell half of these units on the open market. But we're hoping specifically to expats or to Tobagonians. We asked him if that could be done. So they're going to look at that, at 92 out of the 196 units. 96 out of the 192 units be sold on the open market so they could recover. So they're going to be some high-end units. Or there's another trend of thought by Secretary James, who is advising that we make all the high-rise units high-end. So we're still tweaking on things, but the special purpose company will have these discussions, because I'm so glad that they have their instruments of appointment, so that could be a weight off my shoulder.
So essentially, what you're saying is that the contractor is funding the construction of it?
Yes, it's design, build, finance.
All right, so the THE does not put up any money up
No,
front.
we're just using our lands. And we have to be we have to be innovative, because Kandace, we are so underfunded here in Tobago in all aspects. Because my division was given $3 million for housing for this fiscal. But yet the minister in Trinidad just received $200 million in the first quarter of this fiscal to construct so many homes in Trinidad, starter homes, and they're giving them out like water. But you're going to give Tobago $3 million. You gave us some monies. Our development budget is like about $21.8 million. But we know that that is for maintenance of all the existing developments. We have to, since the PNM constructed these housing development, there is no completion certificate for any of them. Because by rights, you're supposed to have these units turned over to a homeowners association.
And we're talking here about Adventure,
Blemin, yes, Castara, in Roxborough. So we still have to pay for the maintenance of all these things in these units. When if you have the completion certificate, they would be handed over to those persons and they would make the necessary contribution to have these things rectified. So most of our money goes into these maintenance. And then you come and give us this pity, this paltry $3 million that could only construct 5 or 6 homes. And that is woefully inadequate for the people of Tobago, and everyone is clamoring.
So as a result, to mitigate that, now we're considering, we're going ahead with design, build, financing mechanisms.
That is how we could get the money in this place. Also, on Friday, we're going to have about 80 to 85 happy families in Tobago.
Why is that?
Because from our calculation, there are 80 parcels of lands to be distributed tomorrow. And when I came into office, I specifically asked the division, are there any units available in Adventure? Because I know persons were saying they're passing by and they're seeing it's non-occupied. As you could remember, in 2022, we gave one to Rennie Kwao, our famous athlete. And tomorrow we'll be giving out 4 to 4 needy families in Tobago. So that means there were 5 units there that were just sitting idly by and nothing, and Tobagoans have been clamoring for some place to live. Some units that were heavily subsidized, because from our information, these were constructed at a cost of $1.25 million, but were sold at $450,000. The 3-bedroom and the 2 bedrooms were sold at $400,000. Yet, Tobagoans, young Tobagoans who could afford these things, were not given the privilege to own their own home. And under my watch, every parcel of land will be given out. Every unit will be given out. As soon as they become available, everyone will be given out.
And so that set of land that's going to be given out tomorrow, just give us some more details about it, and some of the people is it that they'll be selected through the lottery mechanism, or what's the process like in selecting the people or designating the people for those lands?
Well, the process is that we have one new development, or one new phase in one of the development, which will be Pollard. They have 23 parcels available there. So there will be a draw for Pollard. I'm still ironing out with the Chief Secretary and the Executive Council. All the rest of development that we have lands available, which is like Buku, Milford Court, Castara, Blemin, Belgarden. This is what we call infill. Since that they started and they come to a closure, all the available lands is under the purview of the secretary. So Kandace, I could call you, I could call Julian, I could call your staff and just tell you, okay, you've been awarded this parcel of land. But because of transparency and accountability spearheaded by our chief secretary, is that we're going to use the criteria that we use in the draw system to select persons for these. So you're going to have persons who are from the protective services.
Yes.
We have nurses. We have persons who are single parents. We have persons who are in the program where you through FCB Bank, young homeowners. We're going to make sure that we're going to make some calls today who are still interested and make sure that some of them are selected to receive these parcels of land. Okay. And what I've decided from the division standpoint is that since Milford Court is a flat area, we have so many persons who indigent, those persons who are visually impaired, like the first one we built in Milford Court. We have some amputees who are still awaiting money from their jobs, but are being evicted because I know 2 months ago, us as Assemblyman had to put together to pay rent because the landlord was about to put this person out and stuff like that. So we're going to use the 5 parcels available. This will not be in the draw to construct this social affordable housing program, the home program, home ownership made equal for persons with disabilities.
That's
so it's
great.
going to be flat. It's going to be wheelchair access, everything like that. So we have a company who was doing some sewage connection there. They're charged with doing the surveys. So as soon as that is done, the contractor will be able to go in on contract, because we are building 10 social affordable housing. We started one yesterday in Bremen, or not yesterday, we poured concrete on the foundation yesterday, and the contractor have 9 more to build throughout Tobago.
All right, great. Well, we're going to get more into some of those other initiatives on home builds and so on, but we got to go for a quick break, so viewers, please don't go anywhere. And welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing our conversations this morning with the Secretary of Settlements, Public Utilities and Urban Renewal. And Urban Development,
Rural Development.
Sorry.
Rural.
All right, so yes, so that's Mr. Ian Pollard. And of course, we are talking about housing, because that is such a major issue here in Tobago, when access to housing is a challenge. And before we went to the break, he was talking about several initiatives to ensure various sectors in society have access to housing. And the THA is going to do what they can to be able to construct some of those housing. Now, you mentioned the homes that you were going to prepare in Milford Court for those, for a few people who have mobility issues. Now, are those going to be funded from the THA, or are those going to be part of that design, build, financing arrangement?
Those are funded by the THA. So we had the $3 million we had for housing, social affordable housing. Then the Chief Secretary gave us a $2 million from the unexpended balances. So we're hoping that we could utilize them. Media Review asked for a couple more $1 million. But the special purpose company they are charged with doing that now, making sure that we source financing to these constructions. So we're hoping that we could get off the ground. It's only Monday they receive the instruments of appointment, so we're hoping that they could. And the 80 units that 80 plus passes we're gonna distribute tomorrow, and it's gonna be they will be sold. Plus these 4 housing units, we hope to use this money back into the system to construct more homes for persons who are in need.
Certainly. And then what's also been happening with the home improvement grants, because that's another line item under your division.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of people get the assistance to make the adjustments in their homes and so on.
Yes. Last year I've put a hold on it just after the start of the new fiscal, because we're looking to implement some measures that we saw in Jamaica on our trip, because we're trying to model what is best fit.
Yes.
Because we have gotten auditor reports, auditor general report, and even internal audit reports of misuse of the public funds. And if anybody knows me, I'm very strict, I'm very straight where that is concerned. As I quote from one of I call him my father, Mr. Bertil Sinclair, once you're doing the right thing, you have no reason to look over your shoulder. And that is my principle that going forward I will always do. So there are stopgap measures we hope to put in place. We find the forms was a bit onerous. What we want to do, Kandace, is that these sums of money that was allocated to each grant, 15,000, 20,000, 35,000, and 50,000, that was since 2002, 2005 area. Now with the increasing cost of material, we just saw an increase in cement last week by $4.
Yes.
And you're wondering if someone has to do some work on their house, how far could $15,000 carry you? Because that is for material and labor. How far can $20,000 carry you? And then we found that some of the grants are not meeting the persons who are really in need. Those persons on the lower end of the income bracket in Tobago. I mean, when you go to the communities, because we are proud persons, I mean, some of the living conditions are appalling. So the Jamaica model is that the social intervention officers and the engineering team, they usually come out, they do an assessment of your property, and they will say, okay, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. This is a cost of $50,000, $60,000. We give you that. It's a one-off grant. You get the opportunity to bring your house up to a habitable standard, and then that's it. In the system we have going now, is that every 5 years you could come back and get something, and we find some persons, as soon as they're 5 years, one day after their 5-year period, they're back into the system. So there are some persons who will have to maintain what goes now, but we're going to try to limit that amount. But we really want the help to get to those who in the rural areas, and even some, I mean, we were here with Habitat last week, and when you went into Bagatelle, which is considered part of Scarborough, I mean, no, we're not supposed to be living like that. We are proud people as Tobagonians, so we want the monies to meet whoever, the people that really deserve it. So we have had Auditor General reports telling us that they must have a committee to oversee government spending. You're going to hear the naysayers say next week that Whitey wicked, Whitey hard black. But once I'm doing the right thing, I'm following the guidance of the Auditor General. So we are putting a oversight committee in place of persons of from different sector of the THA, social workers, engineers, that will oversee all grant application for housing and for land, the social affordable landing. So they will do the assessment because it is now done by someone in the unit. And what they do is that we see that favoritism steps in, and then persons who they dislike, they're just discarded and put aside. So we have this team doing that. So it takes the burden off of the administrator who signs. They recommend the administrator just sign, make it an easy flow. But once the persons who really deserve these grants are getting it, I will be happy.
And then what about making sure that the time frame for when these grants are issued is suitable?
It is your first tranche, really, Kandace, is supposed to be within 21 days after assessment. And I'm hoping that we could get to that point. But the second tranche, it depends on you and the recipient with bringing in their bills to the division and have the second tranche process. The process could flow seamlessly, you know. But some person, I encourage persons when they receive the grant, especially for their second tranche, going into the second tranche, make 2 or 3, 4 copies. They don't take computer generated bills. Make sure they are written bills, and make 3 or 4 copies, because sometimes some things comes to the division and all divisions, and they get lost, they misplaced and whatever. And because they can't be able to find it, they can't process for you to get your second tranche. So I always encourage persons to make copies of these bills, but we are trying to bring it to that seamless where you get 21 days for your first check, and once you bring in the money, you get your the bills, you get your second tranche.
Now, I also want to talk about how we construct our homes here in Tobago, because that needs to be evaluated, especially taking into consideration we can be affected by hurricanes, we can be affected by earthquakes and so on. And a lot of times, you know, when we're trying to build our homes, we don't necessarily think too much about making sure that they can withstand the elements. Is there anything that's being done in your division to make sure that we protect ourselves against the effects of climate change and that sort of thing?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Kandace, or you made that statement, because we are now partnering with the Habitat for Humanity. As you see, we signed an MOU last year where we're going to match, I think, $1.45 million to start project. We're going to start that next Wednesday, where they have selected 5 homes to do roof repairs and using hurricane straps. And I mean, you could never be totally prepared for disaster, but doing the right thing. So they're going to have these engineers, and we're going to have this team out next week doing 5 houses. They're doing it in batches of 5. They're going to do retrofitting of homes, 2 homes for solar and rainwater harvesting. So, and what I implemented in the division is that I've seen too many homes in Tobago constructed without guttering. So the water is coming off of the roof, falling right by the post, the foot of the post, and eroding the land after a time. And then it costs the government or the THA hundreds of thousands to come and construct retaining walls. So I made sure that they put that in the grants form now, that you could access guttering, you could do the assessment, we do the guttering, make sure that it could take the water away from your property into the drain. So it saves the assembly in the long run, that we don't have to put up with all these costs. But we can't be fully prepared for any disaster, but we are working with Habitat for Humanity. We're so glad that we have them on board. During this week, we're doing the coastal erosion from climate change. So they're really a great asset to the THA.
Now, one of the reasons why I asked that question is that being in the media for as long as I have, and being on whenever there's a heavy rainfall, whether it's a hurricane or a storm or whatever the case may be, and you look at the homes that get damaged, it's homes that are not built properly. So are we going to be doing anything within our space to ensure that people do actually, just the public in general, whether it's through the THA or whether it's private people, making sure that we do construct our homes in a better way to withstand as much as possible?
That could be done, but Kandace, what leads to this problem is that Tobagonian, we construct homes out of our pockets.
Yes.
We build peace, so we may not be able to follow all the stringent guidelines that you're supposed to do in constructing your home. And that problem stems from the fact that the land titles in Tobago, and the approval from Tongue and Country, which is long and onerous. So that is the heart of the problem, whereby persons are not able to access funding to construct their homes. So they have to do whatever they could do. And if 75% of the persons are employed here under the THA, and we know some of these salaries are capped. You come in your BOA 1, you get $5,100. That is before tax. What can you really do as to get your own home, to do whatever is right? So it will always be a problem, because this is how we are. If the system changes and lands could be valued as residential lands, where you have equity in your property. It is valued at $300,000-400,000. You could now access funding to do whatever is right. So it is a whole. It's a whole big problem that starts from the genesis, from where your ability to access funding from loan, so that you could do the right thing. But I mean, we try to encourage persons to do whatever is right, because at the end of the day, the problem falls on you and the THA. But I could understand why some people build the way how they build, but we're going to encourage them to do whatever is right.
And then as we go forward, I mean, are we also going to see about planning in terms of how we do future developments, so that they can be better constructed, the land can be better utilized to minimize the effects of any adverse weather conditions?
Well, from the THA standpoint, that is the reason for our trips, to go to the Jamaica. Then we were invited by St. Vincent, and I met with the Canadian High Commission on Monday, and they're inviting us to come and look and see this is what you have to do. You have to go out and see how it is done in other places, because some of these countries like Jamaica, they have it right. They have it done right. So we have to just follow these models and hope that we could implement the necessary changes that are needed.
And then what about the construction of the homes themselves? Are we looking at other methods than the traditional methods? Which
is very expensive.
Yes, which is very expensive.
So that is why the social affordable housing is using alternative material. And we're hoping that Tobagonians could buy into that, because the cost of concrete and steel will always increase. And, your salary is not increasing. So we're hoping that persons could at least buy into this new model, this new concept, because it is prevailing throughout the world. You go to New York, you go to England, you go wherever, you go in this high-rise building built out of the same material, and you spend 1 month there, you're happy, you're comfortable. But here we were growing up in the concrete and steel, and we believe that it is hard to change. But the hardest thing in life is change, to accept. But we have to get people to that mindset and that place that we got. There's a cheaper method. Because this weekend I was going through the internet on YouTube, and I was looking at Amazon selling container homes.
Yes, the tiny home movements.
And I'm hoping that the special purpose company could dive into it and see how we could help, because they have persons who are working in the CPEP, the ERP, some persons who are really struggling, and they could fold out into normal size homes. So we have to look at these, that the persons who are on the lower end of the bracket, how we could assist these persons, how we could bring in these homes if at a cost, if in a bulk, and see how many persons we could assist. But there are so many things, because, I mean, some persons might have pride in saying that they don't want to live in a container. But I mean, when these things are retrofitted, there's one built in Riseland by a contractor here. I mean, and that blew me out of the water as to his construction. So I fell in love with container homes from since then. But it's something that we have to move to. It's a place that we have to move to, because housing is a social need.
Yes, certainly.
It affects the homes, it affects everyone. It's a social need.
And sometimes those tiny spaces can work very well. It just really depends on how it's designed, the storage, and there's so many innovations out there that we can adopt and still be very comfortable.
That's it. That's so true, Kandace. So that is what is needed. Proper designs. But I think Tobagonians, I mean, we have met to that stage that once it's wonderful, beautifully designed, they will buy into it. Because everybody wants to know that they move out from a renting situation. I mean, I get the calls every day. I mean, just from the announcement yesterday, I mean, someone showed up at my house last night because they want this. I mean, I've been getting the calls, but I can't blame them. Because everybody wants their own home. Everybody wants their own space. They want to have to bring up their kids in their own space, because sometimes, it's not wise, especially with COVID. So most of these homes that we are constructing now, we're hoping to construct 2 bathrooms, because when you have persons have to isolate at home and having 1 washroom, is a problem for the entire family. So these are the things we have to think in, we have to have futuristically going forward.
All right. Well, we're going to continue more with this conversation, but we have to go for another quick break. So viewers, please don't go anywhere.
Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing our conversation this morning with Secretary Ian Pollard as we discuss what's been going on with housing, public utilities, and even a little bit of his area, Mason Hall, Mariah. We're going to get into those conversations, but I just want to ask you a little bit, because we know that access to housing, access to land has always been a challenge here in Tobago. And in terms of, qualifying for a mortgage, especially for young people, it's our parents could afford homes, but the generation now, the generation after me, it's very difficult. It's not the same. And we're forced into renting because that's the only option they have for housing. And is there anything being considered to, I don't know, maybe allow young people who have had a history of renting to perhaps transition into owning a home with their track record of being able to pay rent? Because we know sometimes rent is more than mortgage, but yet you still can't qualify for a mortgage. All these challenges.
Well, we are looking at several avenues, Kandace. We are looking at intergenerational home ownership, where that your parents, you could sign on with your parents, and then if they pass on, that you now take over these things. So we have to be innovative in order to provide for the young persons. But I'm going to tell you, the board of directors, the young innovative minds that were appointed, they are looking at every avenue to make homes available to the young persons especially. Because I was recently, I did a distribution of lands with Tateco, because I think they invested in INS development. And it was shocking to see the number of young persons that were selected to own homes. Some of them working in my division, they're 20-something, 25, 26, and they were given that. And that is what we have to start to do. Have persons have this pride from this young age. You don't have to be 60 to own a home or 50. You have to have this responsibility from early. So we're hoping that we have different avenues that we could introduce so that younger persons could have access to home. But what I try to encourage persons is that do not get caught up in the motor car industry. Because, they tie you down, they tie you for 7 years. Because, they may not like what I'm saying this morning, but, your salary is pegged to the bank for 7 years, and they offer you insurance. And as soon as a new vehicle comes out, they ask you to trade in and keep you tied there. And then when an opportunity comes for you to buy a parcel of land or to construct your home, you cannot, because your salary is tied to the bank. Avoid higher purchases as much as possible. If you're buying something, try to pay off it as quickly as possible. Try to get as much disposable income as you can, because that is what the bank looks at. Because once you could see that you have the employment and you could see the history that, okay, this person is able to pay for it, your avenue is open. But if you're burdened or riddled with a lot of expenditure, that is going to cause a problem. Then they're going to tell you can't afford a mortgage. So these are the trappings that you have to be aware of and stay far away from it. For now, after you get your home, you still catch car. We still have a good, viable taxi situation in Tobago. You just have to do the sacrifice, and that is what is needed most of all.
Certainly. All right, and I want to talk a little bit about what's been happening in your electoral district of Mariah Mason Hall. I know, well, earlier on, we touched on a lot of the problems in terms of access to lighting and so on, and even increasing the water supply in the area. Well, we saw the booster stations being commissioned. Of course, unfortunately, we're not a part of that. But tell me about some of the other developments that are happening within your district.
Well, Kandace, I'm trying to do whatever I can from out of my pocket in the community. We know garbage is a problem, so we started constructing some bins. I know some of the claim because I was in another media house yesterday, and they were saying the young men were irate with me about not providing jobs. But, there's so much persons that we can employ. Because I don't know if persons look at it, but between 900 to 1,000 persons leave high school every year. We know that we have the THA hires almost everybody on the island. So you could imagine over a 4-year period, we have 4,000 persons who may come out with full passes, those who have gone on to study, those who were struggling and have a trade, and everybody's looking for employment. So there will always be challenges where employment are concerned. But I'm hoping that with the injection of these housing projects, that persons could go and seek employment where they are and be able to help better themselves, improve their lives, but not just sit down and wait for a government job, because I think personally that some persons will, they depend, not say that they depend, but the former regime, this early morning syndrome is now coming back to affect us somewhere down the line, because you have persons who, you're pointing them in the direction of private sector that has 8-hour work, but they're telling now they're looking for something early because they want to do some other hustle. And so it's really a problem. So the young men in my community, I'm just told to have patience. And I was talking to a friend last night, and I'm the secretary for housing and lands. And very few young persons in my constituency have approached me and said, well, okay, Sec, YT, I want to own a piece of land. What do I have to do? I mean, I'm always telling them this is what I want, because I went into politics not just to just give persons like a early morning job, something that is temporary. I want to make meaningful changes in person's life. And when you own a piece of land, when you own a home, I mean, that's your whole family that is affected, 10, 5, 6, 7 persons. Because most of these young people today have 2, 3, 4 children. I mean, you could provide, shelter for your family. So I intend to, my rule as a politician is to make meaningful change. So when I walk out the door or leave this job, I know that I'll leave a lot of persons satisfied that, okay, I was given the opportunity that I didn't think I would ever have in life.
Now, I know one of the things that you first started doing, I think even during the 6-6 period, was to have a parcel of land where you had a community farming project going on, and that would involve some of the young men in the community. How was that going?
No, that was a family project, because I come from a big family, but this job is taking so much of my time. And then my nephew that I worked with, because he was spared, because he was the one who constructed the greenhouse. He's an underwater welder. So he's sometimes out in Europe, he's out in the United States, so he's back and forth. But I have a brother living there, he does his own planting, but we're not, we don't have the opportunity to plant as much as we want. The one brother there, he does whatever he could under the greenhouse, he's planting dasheen. But I mean, I'm hoping that the young men could really get into agriculture, because it could be viable. But it's just that the opportunity that they need. Because those lands are working was private lands, because my father was always an investor in lands and property. So that's where I got that from.
Certainly. But then what about even the farming community in your district? Because there's a lot of farmers. In fact, there's those large parcels of land in like Indian Walk and in Easterfield and so on that is designated for farming.
Yes.
How is that going? And are we going to see even some more of those lands being given out to farmers?
Well, I know my colleague, Secretary Pantin, she has lands to be given out on the Belmont Road in Mason Hall. They're first doing the access road. Those persons in Indian Walk, I think they are having some challenges with the road. I know I spoke to Secretary James about getting the grader to go and give them proper access, because I know that's part of the problem. But they have certain challenges that these guys meet, and they call me out and they call irate, because they're just fed up because things are not happening as quickly as it should. But we ask them that just be a little patient with us. We're going to try our best to repair the roads where that is needed. But I know Secretary Panting is doing a wonderful job in agriculture, and the whole process of granting lands, I think you're going to see sometime this year that will be distribution of lands to farmers, but we're hoping that we could really ramp that up so we could be self-sufficient where agriculture is concerned.
All right. And then, in terms of crime in your area, because, I mean, we had some incidents in the last few months that's been in your area. What have you been doing in terms of engaging the young men and trying to see how we could fix some of those social issues within our community?
Well, there's not for a lack of trying, but once someone makes up their mind to do something, they're going to do it, because they know that they need. Because this weekend, actually, I was at the Mariah police station. I went and spent some time with the police officers. They look at their conditions that they are in Mason Hall, decided to do an intervention, because some of the things that they need up there they're really in need of some stuff at the police station. And I said, like, what is the situation? He said, beside the little marijuana, he said, your area not bad. And then he showed me AK-47 rifle that they got from somewhere in Old Gong in Golden Lane or somewhere down there. And he said, you don't have no set of crime, but it's just that the young men and them with the liming on the block and the marijuana and stuff like that. So I was much pleased about that it's not that high. I know that in my community, we have several murders previously taking place. And it's something I've clamored for a number of years, in that Mason is one of the only community or villages in Tobago that has 5 entrances, points of entrance. And we do not have a camera placed nowhere in Mason. It is so bad that someone came in Mason and stole a 25-seater maxi and was only caught when it passed Bill Brown in Government House Road, because that is where the camera is. And it's something that I've always been advocating, that Mason need cameras on points of entrance and exit, so that at least if anything happened, that the perpetrators could be caught. So I'm always clamoring out. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try with the young men. I never give up trying with the young men, because I have different sporting activities, try to encourage them to do certain things, try to provide employment whenever they are available. Right now, I'm sourcing some persons who probably needed in areas in the THA and see if I could provide employment, but I constantly try to help those who are really, really need.
Mm-hmm. So, well, we're almost to the end of our conversation this morning. We're actually almost out of time, but I just want to give you a couple minutes to, just to speak to your community and even Tobago about some of the things that you have in store for us.
Well, I thank you, Kandace, but I'm partnering with the Kiwanis Club. That's an international organization to provide a play park and build a home for the club at Mason at the community center area. I've also had discussion with my colleague Secretary Baines to do a play park in Mariah, the football field, and a walk-around park, because their field has the size that we could put a walk-around park, because the women in the community have been asking for that. Mm-hmm. I am sponsoring a young man. I've sponsored thus far. I'm hoping I could get the monies to give him the rest of the money to travel to England on the 26th of this month with the Brian Brown football team to go play in Manchester United. I'm sponsoring the Mason Police Youth Club under 15 football tournament. I've sourced funding from the Division of Community Development, and I usually make my contribution to the Mariah Football League, which is one of the better off-season football league. Then I usually have my football league for just my area, because I believe it's community rivalry brings persons together. So it's the Whitey Football League, and I'm sponsoring most of these stuff. Also, what I'm doing for the people on Adelphi Estate, we have about 85 persons on the Adelphi Estate that has letters of comfort. So I'm hoping that they could get deed of lease this year, because you could use state property now to mortgage. And most of these lands that they're living on carries values of up to 300,000 to 400,000, so they have equity in their property, so that they could be given this measure of comfort that they could now look for funding to improve their own homes and take some burden off the big House of Assembly. And there's a family that is dear to me in Highland Road, the Hamilton family. There's always the reciprocating Mason Hall and the Easter Monday. And we in the rural areas are looking at, some persons don't have the finances to go out to Bucco and Mount Pleasant. So they have a lot of bouncy castle fun games and stuff like that. So they're asking me to contribute so that we could have that out on the same Easter Monday in the car park, so the family could come out, the kids could play. So I'm also looking to do that. But what I hope to start the Dem Boys pan tent this year, because in the north side we have no pan side whatsoever. But I've been working on something quietly in Mason. When you enter Mason, all the lands on the left-hand side, that is Adelphi Estate. It's 145 acres of lands. Persons are living on it. And I know I asked the Senior State Council to do some work for me and the valuation department. And they have went out, they have done this survey. They have a lot of artifacts there, historical artifacts on that side. So it's at the Director of Land Management in Trinidad, and they have put a value to it. So I'm hoping that 145 acres, this Chief Secretary now could write the central government asking for it to be acquired for village expansion for the persons in Mason. Because if you could acquire all that land in Crown Point for the airport, where persons need homes, where we have 145 acres, and even though it costs us between 10 to 20 million TT dollars for $145 million, 45 acres, that's a giveaway. So we're hoping that they could accede to our wishes, that we could extend the persons on the north side, because we have lost 22 homes in 10 years on the north side of Tobago. We don't have a fire substation. The police station in our area is the oldest. We don't have an ambulance unit. And that was one of my campaign promises, that we have a substation, one fire unit, so they could contain while they have support from Roxborough or from Canby, till, to contain the fire. And we have ambulance services. The Boris family in Palliative, One of them lost their daughter about 2-3 weeks ago. It took the ambulance 3 to 4 hours to get here, to palliative care. Because we know we are deficient in the number of ambulances on the island. I know Secretary Israel, the Deputy Chief Secretary, is working assiduously to get more ambulance on the island. So we're hoping that we could see that increase as quickly as possible. But the north side really needs revamping, it needs revitalization. And I hope that the people from Maidstone, Mariah, and onwards, Castara, Pallitive, that we really come together to make the north side viable. Because we have the Highlands waterfall, we have many assets.
Yes.
We have many facets. We have
Maidstone
King Peter Bay Road, yeah.
Very beautiful.
So we're hoping that we could get that buy-in by the community, that we could really build the north side and make the north side, just like how Castara is famous, to make other parts of the north side really, really famous. So these are some of the things that I really, really want to work on, that is dear to me. And hope that the person's buying. But I'm really, really glad where we are with the Adelphi estate. I'm really, really glad, because there are persons there that are listening. I hope that you're hearing it for the first time, that you may not have been seeing me, but I've been working quietly to make sure that you are now the owner of the parcel of land that you are living on, and that we could have village expansion in my community.
And I'm pretty certain that those villagers would be so happy to hear that.
Yes, I know they would.
All right. Well, then thank you so much, Mr. Pollard, for being on with us. It was certainly a pleasure speaking with you this morning. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, viewers. So that's how we're going to wrap this show this morning. So hope you have a safe and wonderful day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.